thank you very much for inviting me to come and meet with you today. But I thought it was important to come along and at least speak to you to give you some sense of where the Department of Agriculture is going, to understand the context in which the communication or the conversation and partnership between DAFWA, Department of Agriculture and Food WA, and the universities, in this case particularly Murdoch University, might go. Now, I need to also qualify this by saying that I'll give you some background to where the Department of Agriculture and Food's come from, a sense of where I think we're going, but also I need to qualify this by saying that the future is still to be determined, because the forward budget for the department is challenging, and there are many areas in which we are having a conversation with government, and I'll come back to that. But congratulations on the symposium and on the variety of talks, and I think it really demonstrates the pivotal role that Murdoch plays in the agricultural sector. Now, the department has been on a journey of transition for about a decade, and what we have seen is it slowly extricate itself from that more face-to-face connection with the farming sector and take on a role which is more around how do we intersect with the farming community in the development of the value chain, which really means from farms right through to plate, or in many cases it can be plate back to paddock in the context of the information flowing rather than from us to the market, flowing from the market back to us. And that's certainly a journey that we have been on. The challenge for DAFWA is that in many instances, understanding those value chains very much requires an understanding and an input into on-farm and immediate off-farm systems. And at the moment, that's proving to be challenging because our forward estimates are not looking too good. But part of, I've been asked to come into this role. I started back in March, so I'm a full knowledge on very little. But part of the challenge that I have is to identify what is that core business of the department, and then to present to government my view, and then for government to consider the degree to which they're prepared to fund that. And ultimately, and I'm sure being a university you understand this, we operate using taxpayer dollars, your dollars, if you pay tax, and industry levy monies. And so we have to demonstrate in a competitive field where there are multiple calls on the government money that a dollar invested in agriculture is a dollar well invested. And so part of the journey that we're on at the moment is to look across the department and say, what are those businesses? What is the core business that this department should be in, and where does that sit in the context of what it delivers to the industry? David, you made a comment at the outset, and so did the VC, that this is about the end user. This is about us delivering to the end user. Now, in many cases, that end user may well be domestic, but increasingly that end user is export. So we need to understand what are the signals coming through from those end users that can drive the work that we do. There has been a conversation, and there are public comments made that DAFWA is getting out of R&D. I can tell you that's currently not the case. About 42% of the department staff are either directly or indirectly involved in research, and there are something like nearly 200 staff that either have a PhD or a master's involved in a range of research activities, and that does not include people with diplomas and graduate degrees that are also involved in R&D. But it's true that the R&D is morphing into a focus on those industries which have the greatest capacity to deliver those export outcomes. Our current export out of Western Australia is about $8 billion. The total value of the sector at the wholesale level, retail level in WA is about 20 billion, and it depends on which figures you use and which reference point you use. We employ, as a sector, something like 40,000 people across Western Australia. But if we want to grow the sector, we're not going to grow it domestically. We have to grow it from an export perspective. So it's true that DAFWA's research is moving toward those industries which have the greatest capacity to grow and to deliver export. But equally, we can't ignore those industries which are the significant industries and contributors to the state economy, for which there may be limited growth, but which we need to protect. So we have been through a review process, and which started the week that I joined, and we've had a number of internal and external reviews done. And what we've really landed on is two key points, that DAFWA is in the business of protecting the industry, and we're in the business of growing the industry. So grow and protect, defend and develop, however you might want to present it. Now we do the defend bit or the protect bit mainly through our biosecurity activities, and we do the growth bit through our R&D and advocacy across the sector. And so within that grow and protect, defend and develop, we have then considered a number of key activities that we need to undertake, and we can share those with you over the coming months. But science and innovation is very much part of that. So part of my journey in the last 5 months has been going and speaking to people at this university and other universities. It's been speaking to grower groups. It's been speaking to farmers to understand what is that core business that DAFWA should be in. And Richard and I were at a meeting with the Chief Scientist about a month ago or 5 weeks ago, I think it was, Richard, where there was agreement by all the universities, by the Chief Scientist, that there is a role for DAFWA in that applied R&D, because we're very much the conduit or the connector with the industry, and we have the capacity to undertake our own research, but again, we need to identify what that research should be. But one of the areas in which we need to get better is in the connection with universities. So whether it be, I think we currently have about 4 or 5 projects at least with Murdoch. Under the Barley Genetic Alliance is a package of projects. There are other activities around soils, pastures, ARC linkage. I think we have 1 or 2 ARC linkages. But those sorts of conversations for me need to become much more significant. And I was really privileged to be in Jakarta recently, where your Kirsty Bayliss gave a wonderful presentation on the role of innovation in post-harvest protection or post-harvest activity. And that's an area, again, those sorts of innovations are areas in which we are particularly interested in getting engaged in. Now, how do we develop those relationships? And Kirsty and I were just talking about this before I came up. A lot of those formal networks are not there. A number of the informal networks have disappeared. They're in the process of downsizing, and to give you some sense of the downsizing, DAFWA's gone from about 1,600 staff to under 1,000 in about 8 years. So just giving my time. And in the process, we have lost a lot of excellent staff. We still have excellent staff remaining, but the points of connection with you at an informal level have largely been lost and not re-engaged. So we need to very much re-engage with universities, because I think in the same way that at that meeting that I referenced a moment ago, that Richard and I were at with the Chief Scientist, where we recognised that DAFWA does have a role in R&D, that role is very much going to be in partnerships. So as part of this resetting of agriculture, and by the way, I keep reminding you, this is a lot of my personal views, because again, we're going to government shortly for government to consider their view of agriculture going forward. My view is very much that we need to strongly re-engage with universities for a range of positive and mutually beneficial outcomes that deliver those outcomes to our end user. Now, when I left university, I was very fortunate. I had a couple of options, and I chose to join the department. At that time, it was a employer of choice. My observation would be that's no longer the case. And we need to change that, and we're going to change that in a number of ways. So we have just appointed in fact, I think we're going to appoint a total of 13 graduates over the next couple of months. I think we've already employed about 9. We're looking at developing in fact, we're just about to advertise for a graduate program where there'll be half a dozen students graduates will come in, and they'll go through a 2-year program of activity. We are looking at, I'm proposing that we consider some new PhD scholarships. We consider some new opportunities of reconnection back with the universities to demonstrate and to develop a culture within the department, which is one of making DAFWA an employer, again, of some choice. My title today was The Future of Agricultural Research in WA. And when I got that on the weekend, I had a look at it and I thought, well, I actually can't talk too much about the future of agricultural research in WA, because if it's in the context of where DAFWA is going, we are resetting we are recalibrating. But I can tell you, this is an exciting time to be in the agricultural industry. Beef prices are probably at record highs. Sheep prices are, if not at record, it's certainly at very high levels. There are a number of areas across WA which indicate a very positive way forward. I've been privileged to visit a number of markets with the Minister over the past few months, and there is no doubt that from an export perspective there is strong interest, particularly in animal protein, but also in a range of other areas from our near neighbours. And as the middle class grows across Asia, there is no doubt that there are going to be opportunities, and we need to really position ourselves to take advantage of those opportunities. Thank you very much.